Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome Cédric. Thank you to be there today. So it's a pleasure to welcome you in this Software Luxembourg, Software Craft Luxembourg meetup. Yeah, the wording is a little bit long, so in French we could say craft meetup, and it's easier. Yeah, thank you to be there. Could you introduce yourself in a few words before we start? Yeah?
Yes. Hi everyone. So I'm Cédric. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Promyze, which is a startup based in Bordeaux. So I will introduce this a little bit more after. So yeah, we are 10 people in Bordeaux, and I'm one of the 3 co-founders of the startup. And basically, I have a PhD in software engineering. So I'm after all a software developer. And
okay,
yes, that's all.
Thank you. And what do you want to demonstrate today?
Today, I want to talk with you about a topic that concerns how to align, define, and share software best practices within IT organizations, which is, according to me, an important aspect to take into consideration if you want to provide high quality software. And so that I will share also some feedbacks and experiences from for the 5 years we started Promyze. We discussed with a lot of companies in France. Okay, I don't know for other countries, but it's interesting to see how they handle this topic, and we could discuss a lot more about strategies that are working or not, but we are going to make a little introduction here, and because it's a huge topic, and I will demonstrate a little bit Promyze, the tool we are working on, to show you how we can be useful to share and define best practices within companies.
Okay, great. I think the floor is yours. Just in the chat, so just like we said, but it was in French with Cédric, don't hesitate to post your question directly on the chat. During the event, I will stop Cédric to ask him to answer to your question. And if you want to unmute and ask your question directly, please let's do it. I think we won't be 50, so it would be easy to manage.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's go. Yeah. Yes, so first of all, thank you, Johan, and thank you, Rodislav, for the invitation. Who is not here today, I guess, but you will transfer my my wishes to him.
Yeah, he's in holidays. He's lucky. I think he's in Greece,
okay,
or something like this. So good for him.
Okay, very lucky. Yes. So as I said, so I'm one of the co-founder of Promyze. One of my associate Arthur is here also today. So we are 3 people who have founded this company in 2016. And so as you will see, Promyze is a collaborative tool designed to improve developer skills through best practices definition and sharing. So this is something quite new, and I'm really enjoying to show you what we bring with Promyze and what you can do with this tool. But before the demo, I would like to give you a bit of context. I will not be long, don't worry. The context is quite simple. Today, every company should be aware that it really matters to invest on code quality, processes, methodologies, coaching, tools, whatever you want. IT organizations should be really aware that it's very crucial, very important for them to deliver sustainable source code to remain competitive. What I mean by sustainable is very basic. We're talking here about clean code, code which is really easy to read, to understand, which is extensible, and so on. So it's a code you're not going to throw it away because it has been badly written. Okay, it's a code which can sustain over time. So this is something very important. Source code is a strength for a company. It's really an asset. All companies didn't really understand that, and it's a serious concern. You have to understand that source code is very precious. You have to leverage to maintain these assets. Because companies that accumulate a lot of technical debt, of bad code, will probably fail in their business. They simply won't survive because they can't remain competitive. Maybe you heard this study provided by Stripe in 2018 that reported that developers spend on average 42% of their time dedicated to maintain and understanding existing source code. It's a lot of time. Just imagine if we can reduce this time of 5-10%. It will be a lot of money that will be saved at the end of the year. If you take a world company with hundreds of developers, you can invest this time on more topics which brings more value to the company. So it's very important to keep in mind that companies that succeed, I think, are convinced that IT is a center, is a place where we create value. It's not a place where we lose money. And that makes the difference between companies that succeed and companies that fail. IT is not a center or cost. If you lose money in IT, I think you have some serious issues. Your process, your teams, you have to change something. IT must be really a position, a place where we create value. And that makes the company, that allows the company to remain competitive on its markets. First part of the contest, second part now. We know that in IT organization, developer skills are heterogeneous. It's common that based on our own experiences, we do not have the same set of skills and knowledge and practices. If you consider, for instance, programming language or framework, even in a small company like Promyze, we are 10 people, you find different areas of expertise on this topic. Some of us master React, some of us do not at all. In my case, I'm comfortable with Java. I don't know how to write a single line of code of React, okay? For my developers, it's different. So we have to keep in mind that this is the same also for various topics like architecture, security, design of API, testing, whatever you want. So this is a strength to have in a company, this set of skills, of heterogeneous skills. But we'll see that it's important to spread this knowledge so that we can improve altogether our practices and spread this knowledge. Because based on this context, we have a purpose here. The idea is if we manage to align our coding practices, we'll be able to improve code quality. We'll be able to reduce our maintenance cost. We'll be able to reduce the time spent during developer onboarding or even during code reviews. Because we are able to align the way we should write the code. And remember, each developer is unique. So we have by nature our own way of coding. We have different influences, of course, but we are different. So it's not magic. We're not all coding the same way. We have to align the way we are producing code source in our company. So this is a big challenge for companies. That means that all IT companies should set up a strategy to continuously improve their technical skills and to align their best practices. It's a great way to remain competitive, as we said. It's also a good way to attract highly qualified developers. Both topics are linked. Developers that want to improve themselves, developers who want to learn continuously and so on, and to share with other highly qualified developers, they are going in this kind of company. Okay, they don't want to go in companies that accumulate a lot of technical debt and don't know how to get rid of it. So, as a developer, it's common that we have both expertise areas and lacks in some domains. Okay, as I said previously, I'm comfortable with Java. I'm not comfortable at all with React. I have some lacks, okay, of expertise. And we have to remember one thing. Within a team, or in general even, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We can do the parallel with software developers. If in my team I have 5 people who are mastering React, if I have to write React tomorrow, I don't know the best practice of my company. I don't know what are the best practices of React. I will have to do my task anyway. There is a risk that I introduce some technical debt, some defects, some bad designs, even some bugs. This is something we want to avoid. So of course, it's okay to have some lacks. We can't know everything. If I'm junior, if I just arrived in a company, it's common. I mean, it's very normal. But we should be very careful about that. We should have a strategy to fill these gaps. What are the ways for me to progress in React, for instance, so that we can avoid code defects, bad design, bugs, and so on. So this is really something important here, is to have a strategy to improve everyone's skills in specific areas. The challenge is to become more familiar with companies' best practices, because when someone arrives in a company, if tomorrow I join a new company, I will arrive with my knowledge that that comes from the state of the art, books like Lincoln and so on, but also best practices from my previous company, previous experiences. And now I have to join a new company, which has also its standards, its coding practices. Maybe some of them are come from the state of the art, but we haven't. I have now to fit the organization best practices to become experienced with the best practices in my new company. And this is something interesting because I can also bring my experience maybe to challenge, to update the organization best practices. So this is something really, really important here. And it's similar with what I said just before. Each developer is unique. So I can't join a company and by magic just have the same coding practices and those guys in this company. I have to fit. I have to catch up with them, with their best practices. So which kind of strategy do we have to align our best practices and to share knowledge? Of course, we have all this methodology, code review, parallel programming, all that stem from extreme programming philosophy and so on. Something which is more and more common as well, technical coaching, which is something I wanted to mention it because past few years we have plenty of framework to scale agile in companies. That's a good stuff, but as you know, craftsmanship is something which try to correct the fact that the technical aspect has been forgotten with the expansion of agile. So now we see more and more technical coach, craft coach in companies, and since few years it's very common to see companies that have as a purpose to scale craftsmanship in their company, which should have been done with agile, I agree, but unfortunately was not. You have also some practices you can do with your team, like coding dojo to share programming techniques. Wikis documentation, which is more textual content. You write how we should write the code, how we shouldn't do. And all that concern code analysis tools that are kind of support to align and to avoid common mistake in the code and to detect easily some pattern in the code that could be that should be avoided. So this strategy, of course, bring value, but we saw that there was still some improvements that could be made that are still possible. Just to take a few, if you consider, for instance, the code review process, I think we still may improve this process. For instance, we observe that it's often a one-to-one process. Okay, it's normal, but why it's bad sometimes it's a pity that we have a lot of discussions which are very interesting during pull requests. Okay, the reviewer sometimes explains some best practices, explain some concepts. But once you have merged your pull request, it's not very common to go back to it, read it, to see maybe there is something interesting. There is a lack of capitalization because it's often a one-to-one process, and there is a lot of content that could be shared that could benefit to other people in the team. And it's common also to see some best practices that are repeated by, for instance, a technical leader in the team, which maybe explains the same concept during different code reviews and so on. So that's why maybe there are some things that can be improved in this process. Documentation, wiki are a good initiative, but unfortunately, sometimes we see outdated content because it's often a one-shot process. Okay, a team starts as the motivation someday to say, okay, now we start a wiki. We try to write our best practices in our team to be very great. It would be very helpful for the future developers that will join the team and so on. Okay, what do we start? Don't know. Okay, I have an idea. Okay, we start a bit. We write 5, 10 best practices. And then we realize that it requires a lot of energy to maintain. We don't really know which practices we should write. There is often few people writing it because other developers, which can be more junior, feel less comfortable to write and have less motivation also to be involved in this documentation. And it's not really convenient when you want to use it daily because, okay, it's a wiki, but when you write in your IDE, it's not very convenient to read the wiki to see maybe there is a best practices that could help in right now. And about the code analysis tool, they are very useful. That's a great tool. I love them. But there is something very surprising we saw in some companies. It's the fact that they only rely on this tool to assess whether their source code is great or not in terms of quality. I mean, if the tool says I don't detect any issue, so I give you a grade A, you are green. Company says, okay, we've done our job. There's no interest to try to improve this code. I give you satisfaction. You have done a great job right now, so you can stop it. And it's a pity because code analysis tools, they can detect a lot of issues, but if we are doing a lot of code reviews and pair programming, it's because code analysis tools can detect everything, all the possible issues that we can have in our code. So they should be supportive, but we can't only rely on this tool. And some companies, unfortunately, rely too much on this tool. Just to illustrate what I said before, but the pull request, maybe some of you had this experience. It's just an example of two pull requests and the same guy explaining the same, twice the same best practices on how to build a string helper message in this case. So it's very common. So the best practice definition if you want to share it to align your code practices, it's important that they are defined somewhere. There is 3 main situations for best practices definition. You go in a company, you ask a developer where I can find your best practices. Even after 5 seconds, you don't have a clear answer. I'm pretty sure there's nothing. It may happen if you didn't take time to think about it. You have then some confident developers who say, don't worry, it's all in my mind. You can trust my memory. My memory, I'm very a reliable guy, so don't worry, just ask me. And just pray for I don't leave the team. And the last part is more teams that try to document, to maintain some documentation about their best practices, which is very helpful as well during onboarding process. So that was a short introduction of the context of the topic of how to align best practices in your organization. And all of this motivated us to build a new way for developers team to continuously improve their technical skills through best practices, definition, and sharing. That's really what we want to do with Promyze. And within Promyze, we have designed a framework, a kind of framework, which is called Craft Workshop. Craft, reference to software craftsmanship, of course. And the idea of Craft Workshop is to have a continuous process, which is divided in two main steps. There is a first step, which is contribution. All developers in a team, in an organization, are invited to every week to identify in the code they are working on, identify best practices that are followed or not, in order to, at some point, regularly exchange with the team, make it in common, and take technical decisions. So the first process, contribution, as I said, the idea with Promyze is you can easily, through the web app Promyze, or thanks to our plugin, compatible today with JetBrains, Visual Studio, VS Code, or during code review, we have a Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Opera plugins. You can easily identify piece of code, snippet of code, and say, this is the best practice that has been followed or not. Okay, and the idea is to really take the habit to do this once or twice a week. Everyone is going to do it, and at some point, we are going to make this retrospective. So the Craft Workshop retrospective is typically a 1-hour meeting, which is planned. In Promyze, we do it every week, every Friday afternoon. Some customers just do it once every 2 weeks. Depends on every teams and projects. Okay. And we are just going to discuss about what has been suggested by all the developers in the step 1, in the contribution step. And this is really the place where happen knowledge sharing, technical explanation, discussion of what is the best for our team. And this is a way where we can enrich our repository of best practices. So we create all together some best practices, and you will see that in Promyze, we can maintain easily a repository of best practices and share it with other teams in the organization. This is a way to discuss, align best practices in a company. And sometimes, very often, I would say, it's not common to have this kind of technical slots dedicated to how we could improve our technical skills and how to improve our best practices. It's not common to have it within a team, and it's even less common to have it within an organization across different teams. So it's really a good framework for that. So I'm going to introduce you a bit with Promyze, which is available on Promyze, on SaaS as well. Even it's today, currently we're talking, it's a freemium version. You can try it for free on promyze.com. And next month, hopefully, we have a full SaaS available, full SaaS version available. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, welcome on Promyze. So, as I said, we have this framework of workshop. So when I'm connected to when I'm logged in Promyze, let's say I'm developer. Okay, I work with my team. My team is called it's a feature team. Okay, I call it a feature team payments. What can I do with Promyze? What I see here, I have a craft workshop running. Okay, we have a retrospective planned in 30 minutes. Okay, I have enough time to contribute. The contribution of the craft workshop, I can do it directly within the craft workshop itself, because I have the capability to add some source code file. Okay, this is something I can do by myself, or we can decide it all together with our team. So the idea is just to pick up some file, maybe if you want, files which have been modified a lot of times since for a few weeks ago or something like this. Source code which is living, which could be interesting to discuss. So in my case here, I have free file in this workshop. And what can I do now with my Craft workshop? You can see these free files, and on each file, the process is very simple. My job is to take a step back on the code and to try to make a code review, but really with the goal to identify best practices that could be followed or not. Let's take a simple example. Here I have a API file with JavaScript code. And as you can see, there is here a construction, a method call user repository. I like that because it allows to to separate business logic and database implementation and so on. So I find it interesting to have this pattern, to use this best practice. So what can I do? I can select this line of code, just simple as that. There is a panel which is opening here with all my existing best practices in Promyze. For the moment, we don't have a few because we just started to use Promyze. And I'm going to write my best practices definition. I want to call it user repository to separate logic and database. I don't know if it's a bad way. I don't know if I really understood this concept, but at least I want to suggest this best practice, and we will discuss on that with my team during the retrospective. And maybe I will learn from the others, and that's the purpose of Promyze. We want to learn from each other. As you can see, there's nothing existing in my current repository, so I'm going to create this practice. This is a contribution, and I can set a few descriptions, so I will do it later. I can make some categories. I can add some categories which are like hashtags, and I can say whether it's a positive or negative tag. In my case, it's positive because the best practice has been followed. In the other case, I should have put negative tag. So now you can see the positive tag on Promyze. For the moment, only me as a developer, as Cédric, I can see my contribution. I do not necessarily directly here see the other developers' contribution. I can find them in my news feed on the home page, but for the moment, I want really to have only the source code to not be disrupted. And something which is interesting as well, I'm going to take an example of a negative tag. As you can see here, there is a comment, a source code comment, which is not really helpful because actually it just explain what the line 43 is doing. So it does not really bring value. So what I want to suggest here is to only use a comment when it makes sense, when it really brings value. So in the same way, I'm gonna select I've just selected these two lines, and I'm gonna suggest the best practice. I'm gonna call it use comments only when necessary. Just an example. I'm gonna create it. Categories, can I add comment? Yeah, I'm gonna add comments. In this case, it's negative tag. And what I can do is to suggest a correction because it will be more understandable by the other developers if I add a correction to say, this is what I had in mind. What can I do? It's quite simple. I can just remove, this comment because it doesn't break anything to the code. But I can also, change this if predicate and extract the condition in a Boolean variable just above, like this. I'm gonna call it a still product in basket. I think it's something like this. In any case, it doesn't matter, it's just to illustrate. And now I think my code is clearer to read and understand, It's my opinion. I don't know if it's true, if it's the best way to go, but in any case, it will be interesting because if it's not the case, someone else will teach me why it's not the best way. It's not the best way to do so. So here I go. I've saved my correction. So I can do it, as I say, via this web app, but we have an ecosystem of plugins, as I told you just before. So let's take an example of how it works with VS Code. Okay, that's the plugin, the Promyze plugin for VS Code, as well as for JetBrains and Visual Code, brings different features. First one is to have access to your database of best practices. Okay, so the description and some examples, which can be useful while in code. You have also a record of the existing sessions, and most importantly, you can also directly, when you are coding, identify some best practices that has been followed or not. So instead of copy pasting a snippet of code on your Slack or Teams to say, guys, this is not the way we should do, take care, be careful, and so on, what you're going to do is to catch your snippet, mark it as a best practice followed or not, so that you'll be sure that during the retrospective, everyone will be there to listen to you and to get the information. So let's take a simple example. Here, as you can see, it's still GS code. I have a for loop, okay? And within this for loop, I have a await mechanism call, okay? Which is which raises some performance issue, because actually all these calls could be performed in parallel, okay? They are independent of each other. And as we use the await mechanism, we wait that the call finishes. So if we have a lot of users here, we're going to waste some time, some computation time. So here, what I think, I suggest we use something called Promyze.all with JavaScript. Probably you know that, which will run all the queries in parallel. Okay. So I'm going to do it now. So I pick up this snippet of code once again. And thanks to Promyze plugin, as you can see, I can tag the selection as a new practice example. In my case, here is a negative example. Promyze tags as a new practice example. I'm gonna call it use Promyze.all for parallel calls. Okay. I can add some hashtag. I'm gonna use performance. Okay. So here, what I've just done, I just identify a negative example. But as I'm coding, I'm gonna fix this negative code. So as I'm lazy as well, I just copy pasted the right way to go. So as you can see now, I have a Promyze all codes, and so all my requests will be parallelized. That's what I want. And now I can select this code and say with the Promyze plugin, now you send these changes as a correction to the previous negative tag, so that everyone in my team will see before how it was before and how it should be now. And so this is very useful when you are coding, because you know that your team should see what you have just done. You are convinced of that, but everyone is working and you don't want to disturb or interrupt everyone, because we are already enough interrupted during our working days. So it's good to say, okay, I catch this. And I'm sure that Friday afternoon, when we will do the retrospective, we will have time and everything will be here to discuss and to get this information. And last point I wanted to show you is we have also some code review plugins. So typically, I'm in this case. I'm working on GS code, so I am on GitLab within a merge request. What can I do with the Promyze plugin? First of all, is to display the best practices. Okay, so it can be used as a checklist, or even if you don't want to explain again the best practices, you can just click on practice and typically copy the hyperlink. So that the author of the code will be able to check the best practices you are referring to. So you will gain some, you will save some time. And you can also create some best practices directly from your web browser. In that case, for instance, you see we are using Moment.js, so a framework to handle dates. And this is a good way to mock dates because you want your unit test to work at any time during the night, the day, whatever in the earth. So Moment is a good way to mock dates. This is something I want to highlight and share with my team. So in the same way as we did before, I'm just gonna select this few line, and I'm gonna take this selection as a practice example. This is a new practice. I'm gonna call it use date moment to mock dates. Category, I'm gonna say dates because it's a painful topic in software development, and this is a positive practice example. And it's going to now to Promyze. Okay, so this is typically the workflow of me as a developer working with Promyze, taking really a few seconds, few minutes. You see, it's very quick just to catch up some pieces of code that I want to discuss with my team. And now it's time for the retrospective. So imagine we are all together, physically or not. So currently, the trend is more to do it remotely. So someone is sharing his screen, like any meeting, actually. So what happens when you start the retrospective? Someone is going to animate this retrospective, sharing his screen, and giving the speech to every people who made contribution. So we're going through each contribution one by one, and we are going to discuss to say, okay, do we agree with your contribution? Should we adjust it? Should we update because it's not precise enough or correct enough? Or should we simply discard it because it's not the right way to go? In this case, it's not a big deal because I would have learned something. If that's the right case, at least now I know. So for instance, here, I'm going to explain why we should use Promyze.all for parallel code. There is a discussion with my team, and in the end, okay, we agree whether or not we keep this practice. In my case, we're going to validate this practice. Okay, let's say we all agree with that. I'm going to show to do this for every snippet we have tagged. Okay, this is the same for use moment to mock that. Let's say I just keep this example. So we start the retrospective with all the contributions that have been made from the plugins, okay, web browser or IDE, and then the second step is to go through all the tags that have been set on the file directly in the workshop. So I can see once again my contribution. I can see as well my teammates' contribution, like our friend Luke Skycoder, Andojo, and so on. So Andojo fix here. We shouldn't do a wait in that case. Maybe he's right. We'll have to discuss it. If some practices, if some people are not really agree with some practices, if you discuss for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you feel you won't make a decision because everyone disagree, we have this cool feature to launch battle. Launch a battle, what does it mean? When a practice is in battle, everyone can just vote, okay, whether we are in favor or not, or simply neutral, okay? We don't know. We can add some arguments for and against the best practices. And this is something we're going to do until the next retrospective, okay? So everyone is going to think about it for 1-2 weeks. And then when we will start the next retrospective, we will just assess whether or not we are going to keep this practice. So something very cool as well, if we consider these practices I created about the comments, as you can see now, something interesting is that we document each best practices with concrete example and counter examples from the source code. So every time a developer tags the best practices followed or not in the code, it's going to document, to update the documentation of the best practices with a list of examples which are directly extracted from the source code. Okay, it's not hello world example of this kind of thing. So it really helps understanding of the best practices. So that's something which is very cool with Promyze. So yeah, we're going to go through each contribution, as I said. Okay, I have plenty of file. And something as well I could do is during the retrospective, if we have some discussion, I could as well we could as well identify directly in this file some best practices. So as you can see here, there is a best practices we did in Promyze before, is to say everyone every time we catch an error, we use this Themis API service. Okay, this is something we do systematically. Everyone we catch an exception. So I can do it now. So I can also create some best practices during the retrospective. I'm gonna call it Themis API service should be called should be used when catching error. And the reason why I wanted to show that is quite simple. So I create category, positive tag, and we're okay. The cool thing now is now in Promyze, every tag we have set, we have decided every tag we have validated all together within the craft workshop. We can now find them directly in our Visual in our VS Code tool, for instance. This is something very interesting. So just imagine. We are okay with that. This is something quite cool. I don't know if I can show you it now. Maybe I don't know if it's working. Yeah, it's working. Cool. As you can see, every time you are tagging something positive or negative, thanks to the Promyze plugin, you will have this this information that this line, okay, is a best practice implementation. So, and it's very interesting as well when you are setting negative tags, because here it's a positive tag, okay, so it's easy. You have the information, okay, it's interesting. When it's a negative tag, you may think, okay, it's true, we said it during the past retrospective. Maybe I could take few seconds, few minutes to correct, to fix this tag. So it's like a cyclic process. You identify things, you discuss with your team to say, okay, we should do differently, and then after the retrospective, you can correct this these negative tags. Okay, this is a way to really a great way to share knowledge and to share knowledge within your team. Lastly, last thing I wanted to show you, I show you this process. I show you the process of sharing knowledge within a software development team. You have also the capability to make craft workshop across teams. This is something very interesting. For example, within a community of practices, if you have several teams working with React.js, for instance, you can make a common craft workshop and exchange all together. And at some point, you can also create some public catalogs of practices. Okay, so here in the catalogs menu, you can see, for instance, we have some practices with test, HTML, hexagonal architecture, clean code, and so on. This is only a set of practices we propose to the other teams. And sometimes it can be helpful because, for instance, if you take React.js, in some companies, you often have a pool of developers. We have maybe more expertise in React, and they say, okay, this is the way we should write React code in our company. So what we can do is just to build a catalog of best practices to make it public, so that every teams would have access to those practices and can benefit them during their daily work. So that's really the purpose of Promyze. the idea in a few months, in the following months, are to really build a collaborative solution, a collaborative platform with more social mechanism, more interaction between teams, really to ease the discussion and the definition around best practices and our coding practices in companies. Okay, Johan, I'm done. I don't know if I was too long. If it's the case, I'm sorry. So I'm ready to discuss with you all now.
No, not at all. Thank you, Cédric. Thank you. I think it was really interesting from my point of view and really great.
Thank you.
So we didn't have any question. Do you have any question in the audience? It's the moment. Question about the tool, about the concepts, about the workshop. Don't hesitate. Just unmute and you are really shine. Okay. As usual, I have a lot of questions.
Hi, sorry, Ismail from the UK here. Really good talk. Enjoyed that, and the tool itself looks really good. One question was, does it have integrations with Bitbucket? And I know you've mentioned GitLab. So if we have already sort of private repositories sitting around in Bitbucket, can we integrate that quite easily? Or
yes, the web browser plugin works on GitLab, Azure DevOps, Bitbucket as well. So it should be okay. And there is also an integration with Git, which makes sense when you want to pick up some files to discuss with your team. Promyze is going to analyze your Git repository to identify the files that could be interesting to discuss, because there was a lot of modification on these files by different people. So we also bring this integration, yes. And thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
There's another question from Carlos. Do you have any integration with AWS Cloud9?
AWS Cloud9. What is the Cloud9? Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the same time. Not yet, but actually our plugin, it's not a big challenge to make it work for new system. So we'll take a look on that. It was the first time we asked me this question, so okay. I see where is it. Okay, we'll take a look. For the moment, I'm not sure it's working, but maybe you can give it a try and tell us if it's working.
We need to keep in touch. We need to take a look at the Promyze releases, I think.
Yes.
Release notes. Yeah. Great, thanks. Okay, thank you, Carlos, for your question. I have one question. I have some questions. Maybe the first one would be regarding the participation. I have already made this kind of workshop without the tool for sure, but and sometimes it's really hard to talk about negative example. For example, if people think about finger pointing, you did a shitty job and so on. With your experience and with the platform, does it? Is it better regarding behaviors? Does it help?
I think it's it's kind of helpful, yeah, because I remember a team, we were not doing code reviews at all, and so discussing about their code, it was something new for them. So we didn't know how it would take place. But fortunately, maybe because of the, I don't know, user experience and something, people felt comfortable just to make some suggestions. And I think maybe the tool was a kind of support because I don't know, it was something. It was kind of third-party actor in the team, and in some teams we are not really used to make some code reviews. It did well. Promyze did well. I don't remember a team where we had some strange behavior or negative behavior, because actually when teams our customers start with Promyze, they have this this goal, this ambition to improve the way they code. So I think teams with a really negative mood, climate, and so on, I'm not really sure that they would like to try Promyze. So you have to work before, on the mindset, train people, explain a lot of things before starting something. This is the most difficult part.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I leave it daily. But yeah, I think the power of the real power of the platform is really to build it collaboratively, and you can reuse what you've done in the past, and you can see it evolving. So I think it's really great in terms of team building, team collaboration, and so on. So yeah, really cool. Really cool.
Thank
you.
Hey, Cédric, really nice, interesting talk, and really good.
Thank you.
There. So I was wondering, as this cycle continues, like, we will have at some point maybe hundreds of best practices. Did you consider at some point in the future, perhaps some way to, maybe as you're writing code or as you're going through a code review, some way of indicating, okay, there is a best practice that kind of relates to this, or there are a couple of best practices that kind of relate to this? Otherwise, it's going to be all in our heads.
Yep. Great question, which is often asked. So very interesting. What can I say about that? So first of all, when your repository of practices is growing up, we are going to release in a few weeks some features to constantly review, assess our existing practices to make sure there is no outdated practices or something, first of all. And the second one, we are also working, it's more complicated, but it's more complicated, but we think we might find some solution. As we tag, as we select some code and say, this is the best practice, followed or not, by some kind of mechanism of learning, we would like to be able to suggest automatically or semi-automatically some pieces of code saying, it looks like quite similar of what I've been identified before. So the main goal would be, if we can do it, to create by yourself your own static analysis tool, but just by saying this is what I want the things to be done or not. So this is current work. Yeah. We hope it will help to identify or at least to suggest during code reviews, for instance, to suggest some practices that should be related, especially if we had some categories, some tags, some extensions. I think this is something we should, definitively add in our tool.
Sounds awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had the same question that Anton, so thank you, Anton, for this one. Maybe my last point was regarding the pricing, and if we want to introduce it in our organization, how we can do it.
Yep. So currently the pricing, if you just take a look. Currently, our website mentions a model for on-premise versions, which contains all the features of Promyze. We have also another module in Promyze I didn't have time to present, but it's more related to technical debt management. So we had some additional features with thanks to integration with Git and tools like SonarCube. We bring some personalized feedback, gamification, action plan generation, and so on. So there are a lot of new features in the on-premise version I didn't show you today. The basic price today is around 200 euros per year per developer. The SaaS version, the full SaaS version, which will be available next month, will contain the Craft workshop features and also Git integration. The pricing, I'm not going to tell you that because we're not currently short, but I would say something between 5 and 20 euros per developer. No, but I will let you know, and if it's possible, maybe I will. If we will maybe send you some kind of discount code for people who are it today. I don't know if it's possible, but yeah, next month I hope I will give you some news about that.
Okay, great, thanks.
But there is a pricing model based on users. This is something you have to retain.
Cool. Yeah, we are running out of time, so yeah, just in time, 1:30. Do you have any other questions on the chat? No? Guys in the audience, guys and ladies, sorry. No more questions? So thank you, Cédric. Thank you, Arthur, as well. I don't know if you have still, yeah, Arthur is here as well. He's mute, but he's here. Thank you, Arthur, as well. And thank you all. The next event will be, I don't remember the exact date. I have a shitty memory, I must admit. I think it will be 7, yeah, something like this. It will be at the beginning of June. You have it on the meetup agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I can show it for you if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Here you are.
So yeah, the next one.
Sunday.
No, it's not. It's loading. No, the next one is. Yeah, I have a 1st of June. Yeah, thank you. 1st of June. It will be with at the end of the day because we'll have Nicolas Carlo. He's working in the Canada, so it will be easier for him. Yeah, I think it's UTC -4, something like this. So it will be around noon for around lunchtime for us for him, and it will be on 7 techniques to tame a legacy code base. Is really interesting guys, and we'll try to make it interactive, so to have some kind of discussion during the talk. It will be a really good session with a really good guy, as usual, I would say. So
yeah, he wrote a book, you know? Yeah, he wrote a book.
Yeah,
yes,
you can. Yeah.
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, first aid kit on legacy code. Really good examples and some interesting topics. You will discover it at the beginning of June, and maybe you will have a discount as well for his book.
Hope so.
Okay. Thank you again, Cédric.
Thank you to you, and thank you everyone.
Thank you,
and
everyone.
See you soon.
See you soon. Yes. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.